Welcome to the Hiscall Technology Podcast, where we are communicating tomorrow's business needs today. From just outside Nashville, Tennessee, join Hiscall as we discuss all things telephony, data, and infrastructure related to business leaders. Here we go.
This is Chuck, your host for this episode of the Hiscall Technology Podcast. In what has become a tradition since our first episode in January 2019, our guest for January 2022 is Hiscall President and CEO Gary Luffman. Thank you for coming once again to kick off 2022 for the podcast, Gary.
Hello, Chuck. It's sure good to see you again in here, and thank you for inviting me.
As we sit here in Hiscall's podcast studio, I want to say thank you again for supporting the podcast the way that you have. You've just installed soundproofing in the podcast studio. I'm real excited. It really looks cool, for one thing, but I'm real excited about the difference in the sound of the podcast.
Well, you know, over the years, we've seen the results of the podcast. When you first introduced this, it was one of those things like, well, we'll see how it works, and it has grown. It seems like it's one of those things like, you know, everything's got a time and a season, and, you know, years ago we've done videos and we've done shows, we've done all sorts of things, face-to-face visits, but the podcast seems like it's really taken off well, and I know that's what a lot of people like, and your episodes have some teachable moments and you have all these guests come on there, and we see the stats from it, so I'm very happy to support this.
Well, I really appreciate it. I mentioned the soundproofing. Also, if listeners saw the video podcast we did in December, they saw the neon sign. It's been relocated, and you've jazzed it up a little bit with some custom woodwork.
We thought it would just give it a little bit of touch. And you spend so much time in here doing this. We want to make you a little more comfortable and have a better sounding product at the end too.
Well, it feels first class. I hope I can do it justice on the backside of all this.
Now, the next thing, though, we're going to want to know, are you going to have a hit single or something that we're going to put on the radio?
Well, I'm waiting on John to finish my song.
Oh, okay. All right.
He's got to write my hit song.
I have a feeling you're going to probably wait a while.
Well, Gary, it's as we're recording this, we're nearing the end of 2021. I thought we'd just start with some reflections on 2021, if that's okay.
Wow. Well, if you don't mind, let me back up to 2020.
Yeah.
That was a rough year, and we can put that in the history books. The COVID thing hit, unfortunately, for the U.S. and the globe, we're starting to get used to having to navigate business through COVID requirements. I was really glad, in a way, that it put 2020 behind us. Now, 2021, thank the Lord, it turned out to be a much better year. We look back at that at the beginning, a little sluggish. Throughout the year, though, it's gotten better. And again, I believe because businesses have learned how to navigate through all the perils and the requirements and so forth and so on. And we certainly have had to learn that. We've actually ended up 2021 as a very good year, and we're so grateful and thank the Lord for that. This is a year also that we've been in a hiring mode. I just left one of the manager's offices who's got somebody coming in today, and we made an offer, and be another person added. We've got somebody else coming next week. Had somebody come last week, so we've been in a pretty aggressive pace of hiring because the demand is out there right now. And I'm very happy to tell the audience that we've been able to get some really good, sharp talent. It's been a good thing.
That is really good news, and you've got a couple of new salespeople I'm real excited about that are going through orientation right now.
They are. Mm-hmm. They're in their third week right now. This will be their third and final week of orientation and training. They'll be back here Monday, and then we're going to turn them loose and let them go out in the field. They'll be covering two different areas. One's in West Tennessee, one's in Middle Tennessee. They both young guys. They come from different backgrounds. I'm looking for a lot of good things coming from them. They seem like they're very happy to be here, and we're sure glad to get them.
I agree with you there. I saw Ian as I was getting ready to get the podcast going today. he was walking around with a new headset on going, "Do you hear me now?" He's testing out a decked headset in the office.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, both of these guys are college graduates. One of them graduated from one of our customers, Bethel College in West Tennessee. The other one graduated a little while back from Austin P in Clarksville. Little story how he got here, because he was actually coming to try to sell us some things, and something that he did when I wasn't even in the office and left a note just intrigued me to talk with him.
You never know in the course of your day what you do, how it might come back to you, do you?
That's true. Oh, that is so true.
As you look back on 2021, there was a lot of changes in our industry, enterprise communications specifically.
Oh, wow. As our listeners probably know, the time that this being released in January, that will start our 26th year in business.
Yes.
Well, the first probably 20 years was all about telephones and then cabling and fiber optics. To go fast forward today, that's about half of our business. The rest of it has to do with audio-visual, security cameras, access control, nurse call systems, and just a wide array of business communication, hardware and software developments. We've added more on our line card of different brands.
As you look back on 2021, is there a most memorable moment or project or advancement in the business that you're most proud of?
That's a very good question. Certainly, we had a lot of good jobs this year. We had a lot of good business this year. I think the big part for me is to be able, in general, to offer employment opportunities for people that either needed a job and didn't have, or were just wanting to make a career change. That has been good to be able to be back in the hiring mode. Now we're at a higher head count than we were in 19, so that's a good thing. That's a good trend to be on.
That is a good trend. Speaking of trends and looking back at the pandemic and the changes that's pushed in our industry, we see our vendor partners move into cloud more heavily. They're still investing in their premise-based systems. We're glad of that. But you have also invested in Hiscall Cloud.
Oh, yeah.
We first introduced this in April of 2019 on episode 8.
Oh, wow.
Of the podcast. Okay. Can you believe that?
Wow.
That shocked me a little bit. It doesn't seem like it's been that long.
It has, yeah.
I think what our manufacturing, our vendor partners have learned, it takes a lot of time and a lot of money to get a cloud system up and going, and you certainly have lived that.
Yes. The way we do our cloud and built our cloud versus our competitors and some of the real big players out there is we choose to build that on our own servers and our own data network. We have multiple carriers bringing in broadband connections here on fiber and on coax. In Knoxville, same thing. A link between us and Knoxville. Knoxville's our backup. We have 2 different power sources, generators. If we lose city power, we have a diesel-powered generator that takes care of the whole building that here in Dixon that's over 30,000 square feet. And then if we were to be without that, we've got to back up to the generator, so we got to back up to the backup. So we've got provisions we put into place that, without calling names, and everybody knows, unfortunately, who last year lost because of a tornado and they couldn't provide service. We were able to provide dial tone when that carrier could not. And then there was a bombing that everybody knew about last year. And once again, we were called upon by some customers, can you help us? Well, do you have any other providers for broadband? Okay. And we were able to deploy dial tone for them there. I recommend to anybody that will listen, spend your money on your business for communications through 2 different broadband providers, because things do happen. Sometimes it's human error. Sometimes it's a catastrophic event. But that way you've got 2 different broadband providers for your internet, for your email traffic, for everything you do to the World Wide Web. But also, if we're the ones providing you the dial plan, which we've unveiled this year, Hiscall Voice Connect, where we can bring dial tone to you, then if one carrier is down, we can easily switch to the other. And the difference is that we're finding from a lot of our customers, whether on our cloud services or the Voice Connect or Voice as a Standby, that's another product, is that our customers call us and we are the provider. We are now the carrier. We welcome them to call us anytime, 24/7, 365. Well, this is another way we can help them directly because as long as we've got the broadband connections, we can handle everything else. And it'll be us that'll be the ones to fix the problems and take care of the dial tone. And that's just a few services that we've added this year.
Let's talk a little more in detail about Hiscall Voice Connect and describe what is, when you say Hiscall Voice Connect, what is that to a customer?
Well, for a customer, as I said earlier, sometimes there's a need for premise systems. When you've got the premise system, though, you're still going to have somebody to give you dial tone. We have been able to build out what we call Hiscall Voice Connect, which is us being the provider of the dial tone. And again, we can do that through analog circuitry, straight SIP technology, straight to the system if their system can handle SIP, analog if they cannot, or PRIs, which is what so many customers still have to this day. Well, let's say that they've bought a phone system from us, or they bought one somewhere else and it's not fully depreciated, and maybe they don't fit the cloud environment. They want to keep it on-prem, but they're tired of dealing with one of the big carriers for the dial tone. We can replace that for the dial tone and generate it here.
I think, Gary, it's important to clarify, Hiscall Voice Connect is a voice over IP service. It is SIP trunks, but we can provide analog services off of that.
That's
to
correct.
A phone system that might have analog lines or a ISDN PRI today.
Yes. Yeah, we would deliver the circuit through SIP connections. From that point, we have devices that we can leave it that way if the customer's equipment can accept that. If not, then we put the devices in that will convert it, and life is good. And our rates are really good. We are as competitive as the best ones out there. So that's good news. And we always have this service guarantee that our competition doesn't, that if somebody's not happy with it, we will make it right, or we'll simply tear up the contract and let them go somewhere else, which is a very rare thing that happens because our customers know we do work hard to try to keep that business and make sure that they're very, very pleased with us.
Cost savings is a big advantage and a reason that a customer would look to Hiscall Voice Connect. Cost savings over traditional analog or T1 ISDN services. And Hiscall Voice Connect is a very cost-effective way for a business to save money.
And when we're talking about lower costs, let's just go ahead and tell you now, always prices are subject to change and so forth. And I don't have the rate sheet in front of me, but I can tell you that I believe that our rate for analog lines that we pass off, we bring the circuits in and convert them, I believe is $25 a month per line. One of the carriers, I will not name, has gone up to $174 a month for one phone number, one phone line. Not all of them have gone that high, but we're trying to be competitive with who we're seeing out there. They're good, reputable companies, and still trying to keep the rates down. So that's where we are. We're matching pretty well anybody's PRI rates because we know in the business, you've got to be competitive and provide the service.
On the rate that you mentioned, Gary, does that include unlimited calling?
It does in the United States. It's unlimited calling in the United States. I'd have to look. I know we have different rates factors for overseas international calling, and those can be quoted.
Okay. And you mentioned a little bit, Hiscall Voice Connect works with a SIP-enabled phone system, but if you don't have a SIP-enabled phone system, we can also accommodate analog T1 ISDN PRI connections.
That's true. And it doesn't matter if it's a brand that we're familiar with or not. To our listeners at that point, just understand that we'll be just like the carrier that you may have today, where they bring the circuits in, put them on the wall, and say, here's the connections. If it's a phone system brand that's premise-based and we're not the provider, we can still bring in the dial tone.
And what's important to remember, I think, is if you've got a problem with that circuit for some reason, you call us. You talk to Hiscall. If you've got a question about your billing, you call Hiscall.
That's it.
Well, Gary, as you look at 2022, is there anything that you're hopeful for the business, where you want to see the business grow most, or any goal for the business in 2022?
That's a very good question. We're working on developing some other items of interest, such things as cloud camera systems. There are some out there. Let's face it, the Ring company, they've done a good job, but that's residential. It's a good little product, works as described, but it's not business quality, and the Ring folks will tell you that this is developed for residential use, but for the customers that need super high quality, high resolution, commercial grade cameras. We have 4 different brands. That piece of our business is definitely grown quite a bit. And one of those offers premise as well as cloud. That is a movement we're seeing, that some people, especially smaller businesses that really say they'd rather have an operating expenditure, write a monthly check for, just like on cloud phones, they want to do that with cameras. It's higher quality, very high quality, and businesses that maybe don't need but a very few cameras, this might be a much more affordable option to help deter thefts, watch license plates when people leave a building, and there's all sorts of good things we can do. We can put up what's called geofencing around certain areas, so the listeners may not know what that is. If you've got a camera pointed to a certain area and you want to capture anything in movement within a certain area that you sketch out electronically, just geographically an area, and say, I want to see this area, anything that happens here as soon as there's movement, I want to see all the recording. We can do those things. We've got all sorts of analytics we can put into the systems. That piece of the business is something that I'm expecting is going to really grow. It won't be just the phone side. It's going to be the cameras. It'll be different things we're looking at with access control. Something I don't think we haven't talked about on podcasts. I think you may have had Joseph Hines before, with paging systems. Traditional analog paging system been around a long, long time, but now we have more of the IP paging systems that are so revolutionary. The quality of the sound is superb. You don't have the cracking and popping in the background, and clarity is about like sitting in a sound booth here today. It's just super nice. Those are some of the things that we're going to be doing more of, I believe.
Well, I'm excited to for 2022, see where the business goes. And talking about those cameras, there is some really, really cool technology around the security cameras. It was eye-opening for me when you sent me to Vegas a few years ago to that show out there, and I got exposed to the camera systems and the technology and the analytics and artificial intelligence that's built into that to detect objects and heat and movement and all the different things. Just really, really cool technology.
So many times I've sat at home and the news broadcaster comes on, and I'll be sitting there with my wife, and they'll say, Crime Stoppers will say, if you've seen this person, please notify. And I look at her and I'm like, what do you see? I see a blurred image.
That's right.
And that's because the quality of the video cameras and the equipment that the businesses use is not good enough to even help the police. I can tell you that Dixon is a really wonderful place. Dixon County, Dixon City is a wonderful place to live, but we're not immune to crime. The local law enforcement, which does a fantastic job here in Dixon, I know of 3 in particular times I can remember very well. There were crimes committed, and they came to us to say, can you help us with any cameras you might have? Did you see anything go down these streets or whatever? And each time we've been able to help them because the quality of the cameras we got. One time was a trailer that was stolen, a neighboring business that hadn't even moved in yet, and we were able to capture that. They could see the clarity so well that they were, believe it or not, actually able to track down the thieves to the vehicle that they drove off in and stole the trailer. Business right across the street from us had a problem. They came to us for that. One up the street had a problem. Each time we were able to help them and provide video for them good enough that they could tell the vehicles. I think in some cases even read the license plate, but they could definitely tell the make, the model of the vehicle. But that's just the difference of the getting high quality. And basically, as they say, you're going to pay for what you get.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not saying that all this stuff is like super expensive. We've got some cameras that do a very good job that are $100. But we've done a job that I don't know if I can tell who it was because I don't have their permission. But it was a law enforcement group that needed this particular camera. And that camera alone that they needed was somewhere around $4,000 or $5,000. When we bid that, we won because our camera quality had more megapixels for about a third of the price where they were looking. So we got the job. We did this job. They were able to put this thing on a tall mast on an emergency command vehicle and literally see the writing on a sign beside the entrance of a business that was about a block or so away. I think it's probably about 2 or 3/10 of a mile away. Mm-hmm. We can do those things. So anywhere from about any price range, starting like maybe $100 for something up close, or there's some cameras out there that would exceed $10,000. It all depends on what somebody's really, really needing. For the most part, a lot of cameras that are in businesses that you walk down the halls, those things are going to run anywhere from maybe $150 to $350, depending on what they do, whether you want IRs, what kind of range you want, what type of quality. So I don't want the listeners thinking, well, we're just going to be too expensive. Not necessarily. We win several jobs. We win bids. We got to compare apples to apples.
Okay. Well, security should be big in 2022, whether it's security cameras or cybersecurity. We'll watch and see where that goes. Gary, any final words as we wrap up today?
Oh, goodness, Chuck. Honestly, I'm thankful to the good Lord. It's been 2021 was so much of a better year. I think it will end up, we don't have the numbers yet, but I think it will end up being one of probably the top 5 that we've had in our 25-year history. Again, I thank the good Lord for that. I thank our wonderful clientele we have. I thank you and all the wonderful staff that work here at Hiscall and us all pulling together, working as a team. And I definitely do look at 2022. I believe it's going to be another really, really good year. These times, though, test companies. I just hope, pray that we're passing the test with everybody. From what it looks like, the trust factor that our clientele has with Hiscall is just growing stronger each day, and we plan on being around here for a long time and not letting anybody down.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for your leadership and guiding us along the way. Things that you have mentioned are encouraging. You talk about a stellar year in 2021. Talking about new technologies, talking about new hires, bringing on new staff, growing the business, and that's all exciting stuff. I want to thank everyone for listening to the podcast. We do appreciate you taking the time to download it and spend a little time with us here. Hope you find it helpful, and hope you will share it with your friends and coworkers. Spread the news. As we wrap up today, don't be afraid, only believe.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to the Hiscall Technology Podcast. Subscribe to this podcast so you can stay up to date with today's business communication trends. To learn more about Hiscall solutions for your business needs or to listen to previous podcasts, visit us at our website, hiscall.com.